Most men believe that making a woman miss them is about doing more. More texting, more calling, more showing up, more reassurance. But psychologically, desire doesn't grow from excess. It grows from contrast. And this is where emotional absence becomes one of the most misunderstood, yet powerful, forces in human connection. Emotional absence is not disappearance, and it's not manipulation. It's the disciplined ability to step back without resentment, fear, or explanation. When you remove yourself slightly, you give her nervous system space to register your presence as meaningful. The human mind is wired to notice loss faster than consistency. We adapt quickly to what's always available, but we obsess over what becomes uncertain. This is why silence, when used intentionally, speaks louder than constant communication. When you're always accessible, you unintentionally flatten emotional value. Your attention becomes predictable. And predictability, while comforting, is rarely exciting. Mystery dies when everything is on the table at once. Emotional absence reintroduces uncertainty, not in a threatening way, but in a stimulating one. She starts wondering what you're doing, what you're thinking, why you haven't reached out. And in that wondering, you begin occupying her mental space without saying a word. This is where most men get it wrong. They pull away emotionally while staying psychologically needy. They stop texting but keep checking their phone every 5 minutes, hoping she notices. That energy doesn't disappear, it leaks. Women are exceptionally sensitive to emotional incongruence. True emotional absence is internal first. It's when you're genuinely engaged in your life, not waiting to be missed, but allowing missing to happen naturally. There's a philosophical layer here that most people overlook. Desire requires freedom. The moment someone feels emotionally crowded, desire contracts. But when space exists, choice returns. Emotional absence restores her sense of agency. She doesn't feel chased or obligated, she feels drawn. And that distinction is everything. Attraction grows when someone chooses you in your absence, not when they're pressured by your presence. Think about the moments you've missed someone the most in your life. It was never when they were constantly checking in. It was when they were living, moving, evolving, when their absence felt like a gap, not a rejection. Emotional absence creates that gap, and the mind rushes to fill it with memory, imagination, and emotion. This also reframes masculinity in a powerful way. A grounded man doesn't cling. He doesn't over-explain his distance or apologize for having a life. He trusts that his presence has weight, and because it has weight, it can be felt even when it's gone. That trust communicates confidence without arrogance, security without neediness. When you master emotional absence, you're no longer trying to be missed. You simply become missable. Your energy shifts from seeking reaction to embodying value. And that shift changes how women relate to you entirely. They don't just notice when you leave, they feel it. So the question isn't how often you show up. The question is whether your absence leaves an echo, because when your presence has depth, your silence becomes unforgettable. One of the quiet truths about attraction is that a woman doesn't miss a man because he wants her. She misses him because he has a life that continues to move even when she's not in the room. This is where most men unknowingly sabotage desire. They rearrange their entire world around one person, believing devotion will create attachment. But psychologically, attachment grows in the presence of momentum, not sacrifice. When your life is already full, you're not auditioning for her attention. You're inviting her into a world that's already in motion. Purpose, structure, ambition, and routine aren't just personal virtues, they're signals. They communicate that you are self-directed, internally motivated, and emotionally stable. A man like that doesn't need a woman to complete him, and that independence is what makes his absence felt so deeply. There's a reason why people are drawn to movement. Philosophically, motion represents life itself. Stagnation repels because it carries emotional weight, neediness, expectation, pressure. But when you're actively building, learning, training, creating, or leading, your energy feels expansive. A woman senses that being with you doesn't confine her, it elevates her. And when you're gone, she doesn't just miss you, she misses the feeling of forward motion you bring into her emotional world. This is also why busyness alone isn't enough. Filling your calendar to appear unavailable doesn't create attraction if there's no meaning behind it. The fullness of your life has to be real. It has to be rooted in values, goals, and identity. When your purpose is authentic, it stabilizes you emotionally. You stop chasing validation because your self-worth no longer depends on her response. And paradoxically, the less you need her attention, the more impactful your attention becomes. A full life also protects you from emotional overinvestment. You don't interpret silence as rejection or delay as disinterest. You respond rather than react. That emotional steadiness is deeply attractive because it creates safety. Women don't miss chaos, they miss consistency paired with ambition. They miss the man who makes time because he chooses to, not because he has nothing else going on. And here's the critical psychological shift. When your life is full, her role changes. She's no longer the source of excitement or meaning. She becomes a complement to it. That removes pressure from the dynamic. There's no unspoken demand for her to entertain you, validate you, or emotionally regulate you. She's free to desire you instead of feeling responsible for you. This freedom is what creates longing. When she realizes that your happiness doesn't pause in her absence, curiosity emerges. She begins to wonder where she fits, how she contributes, and what she feels when you're not around. Missing doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being chosen among many meaningful options. This is where many men underestimate the power of their own direction. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need to be committed. Committed to growth, to discipline, to a future you're actively shaping. When your days have intention, your presence carries weight. And when your presence carries weight, its absence becomes noticeable. So don't build a full life to impress her. Build it because it makes you grounded, focused, and whole. When you do, you stop asking whether she misses you. You become the kind of man whose absence naturally creates space for longing. And that's the kind of space where desire doesn't fade. It deepens. Most people assume that being consistently present is what creates attachment. Text every day, talk all the time, never let the energy drop. But psychologically, what people miss isn't consistency, it's intensity. Human memory doesn't record frequency nearly as powerfully as it records emotion. We don't remember every conversation we've had. We remember the ones that made us feel something. This is why emotional peaks matter more than constant contact. When every interaction is polite, predictable, and emotionally flat, there's nothing for the mind to revisit. Later, familiarity sets in, and familiarity dulls desire. But when you create moments of depth, laughter that feels effortless, conversations that feel rare, silence that feels comfortable, vulnerability that feels earned, you leave an imprint. And that imprint doesn't disappear when you do. It lingers. Neuroscience supports this. Emotion strengthens memory consolidation. The stronger the emotional charge attached to an experience, the more the brain replays it when the person is absent. That replay is what we call missing someone, not the absence itself, but the emotional echo of what was shared. If your interactions never rise above neutral, there's nothing to echo. This is where many men overcompensate. They replace depth with frequency. Instead of one meaningful interaction, they offer 10 shallow ones. But the mind doesn't crave repetition. It craves resonance. When you're always available, you unintentionally remove the space required for longing to form. Desire needs room to breathe. Without space, emotion suffocates. Creating emotional peaks doesn't mean forcing intensity or performing charisma. It means being fully present when you are there. It means listening without distraction, speaking honestly without oversharing, allowing moments to stretch instead of filling every silence. When you show up with attention and intention, even simple interactions carry emotional weight. Equally important is knowing when to step back. After a strong emotional moment, distance isn't a loss, it's a multiplier. It gives her system time to process, reflect, and miss. Think of it like music. A song without pauses is just noise. It's the silence between notes that gives the melody meaning. Your absence after an emotional peak turns connection into craving. This is also where emotional discipline comes in. Many men panic when the interaction goes well. They immediately follow you, chase the high, try to sustain the feeling. But that urgency collapses the emotional arc. Confidence allows you to let moments end naturally. You don't cling to them. You trust that what was felt was real and that it will resurface on its own. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper truth about human desire. We don't long for people who are always emotionally available. We long for people who make us feel alive and then give us space to feel it. Emotional peaks wake something up inside her. Space allows that awakening to grow roots. When you master this balance, something subtle shifts. She begins associating you with emotion, not obligation, with feeling, not routine. She doesn't think of you because she should. She thinks of you because her body remembers how she felt around you. That's a completely different level of attraction. And here's the most important part. This approach protects your self-respect. You stop performing for attention. You stop measuring connection by response speed or message length. You become intentional instead of reactive. That internal alignment is felt externally. It changes your tone, your timing, your energy. So don't aim to be constantly present. Aim to be emotionally impactful. Create moments that rise above the ordinary, then allow space for them to be missed. Because when you stop trying to stay on her mind and start giving her something worth remembering, missing you becomes inevitable. One of the fastest ways to kill desire is to reveal everything too soon. Not because honesty is wrong, but because timing matters. Attraction isn't built on information alone, it's built on discovery. When a woman feels like she already knows your entire story, your patterns, your thoughts, and your emotional responses, her mind has nothing left to explore. And what the mind can't explore, it stops returning to. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are or playing games. It's about pacing access. Psychologically, humans value what unfolds over time. What's given all at once feels cheap, even if it's meaningful. What's earned through shared moments, curiosity, and gradual trust feels rare. When you reveal yourself slowly, you allow anticipation to grow. And anticipation is a powerful form of desire. Most men overshare because they confuse openness with connection. They talk about their past too early, explain their intentions too clearly, and emotionally dump before intimacy has been built. The result isn't closeness, it's emotional overload. When everything is exposed prematurely, there's no tension, no curiosity, no unanswered question pulling her back into thought. Mystery works because it activates the imagination, and imagination is far more seductive than certainty. When she doesn't know everything about you, her mind fills the gaps. She wonders what motivates you, what you're thinking, how deep you really are. That wondering creates mental engagement, and mental engagement is what turns absence into longing. There's also a deeper philosophical dimension here. Mystery preserves individuality. When you reveal yourself too quickly, you collapse the boundary between you and her. You become emotionally merged, and merged identities don't generate desire. They generate comfort. Desire needs polarity. It needs two distinct individuals moving toward each other, not one person dissolving into the other's emotional space. This doesn't mean being cold or emotionally unavailable. It means allowing intimacy to unfold at a pace that matches trust. You share, but you don't unload. You open up, but you don't over-explain. You answer honestly, but you don't narrate your entire inner world on demand. Confidence isn't loud, it's contained, and contained energy feels powerful. Women are especially sensitive to this bala. When a man holds something back, not out of fear, but out of self-respect, it signals depth. It suggests that there's more beneath the surface, layers that can only be accessed through time and connection. That perception alone makes his absence more noticeable because she hasn't fully figured him out yet. And here's the paradox. The more comfortable you are with being partially unknown, the more secure you actually are. You're no longer trying to be understood immediately. You trust that the right people will discover you over time. That trust removes urgency from your behavior. And urgency is one of the fastest attraction killers. Mystery also protects emotional value. When not everyone has access to every part of you, your presence feels selective rather than desperate. She doesn't feel emotionally flooded, she feels invited. An invitation creates desire far more effectively than availability. So slow the reveal, let conversations breathe, let silence do some of the work. You don't need to explain yourself into importance. When your energy is calm and your words are measured, people lean in. And when they lean in, they begin to miss what they haven't fully reached yet. Because in the end, it's not the man who says everything who stays on her mind. It's the man who leaves just enough unsaid to make her want to know more. At some point in every dynamic, someone sets the emotional tone. They decide how reactive the connection feels, how much pressure exists, how safe or unstable the emotional environment becomes. Most men assume that tone is set by the woman, by her interest level, her responses, her moods. But in reality, the man who understands himself sets the frame. And when you lead the emotional frame, instead of chasing validation, something profound happens. Your presence becomes grounding, and your absence becomes noticeable. Chasing validation is BTL. It doesn't always look desperate. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining your intentions. Sometimes it looks like asking indirect questions just to hear reassurance. Sometimes it's changing your behavior the moment her energy shifts. At its core, validation seeking communicates one thing: my emotional stability depends on your response. And no matter how kind or interested a woman is, that dependency quietly drains attraction. Leading the emotional frame means the opposite. It means you are emotionally self-contained. You don't ignore her feelings, but you don't organize your identity around them either. You're calm when she's unsure, steady when she's emotional, present without being performative. This steadiness is rare, and rarity creates value. Psychologically, humans are drawn to emotional anchors. In uncertain environments, we gravitate toward what feels stable. When a woman senses that you don't need constant reassurance, she relaxes. There's no pressure to manage your emotions, no fear that her honesty will destabilize you. That sense of safety allows desire to grow organically rather than defensively. This is also where polarity is preserved. When you chase validation, you place her emotionally above you. You wait for her approval, her affirmation, her permission to feel secure. That imbalance flips the dynamic. But when you lead emotionally, you meet her as an equal, grounded, responsive, but not reactive. That balance creates tension in the right direction. Leading the frame doesn't mean being rigid or emotionally distant. It means being internally regulated. You can express interest without urgency. You can appreciate her without pedestalizing her. You can enjoy her presence without fearing her absence. And that emotional independence is deeply attractive because it signals maturity, self-trust, and confidence. Notice how this changes behavior. You stop over-texting to keep her engaged. You stop reading into every delay. You stop trying to fix moments of silence. Instead, you allow the connection to breathe. And in that breathing room, she starts to feel something unfamiliar: space. Space to wonder. Space to miss. Space to pursue. There's also a philosophical truth here that's worth sitting with. Desire doesn't grow where there is emotional debt. When someone feels responsible for your emotional state, attraction turns into obligation. But when you lead your own emotional world, you free her from that burden. She doesn't feel needed, she feels chosen, and being chosen is far more intoxicating than being relied upon. This is why men who lead emotionally don't try to hold on when a woman pulls back. They don't punish her with silence or chase her with anxiety. They stay consistent. They trust their value without demanding proof. That trust creates an emotional vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum. What pulls away often returns, not because it was chased, but because it felt the absence of stability. Over time, this becomes your signature. Women don't just remember how you looked or what you said. They remember how they felt in your emotional presence: calm, seen, unpressured. And when that presence is gone, it leaves a gap that noise can't fill. So stop asking how to get her attention. Ask whether your emotional world is solid enough to be missed. Because when you lead the frame with quiet confidence, you don't chase validation. You become the standard, and standards are always felt most when they're absent. Most men believe that desire is purely physical, that attraction can be sustained by charm, looks, or attention alone. But the truth is deeper. What women miss most isn't the man himself, it's how he makes them feel. Desire isn't only about presence, it's about transformation. If your presence leaves someone better than you found them, your absence becomes more than noticeable. It becomes palpable, almost impossible to ignore. This begins with emotional impact. A man who listens deeply, who understands without judgment, who responds instead of reacts, leaves a lasting impression. Women are wired to remember experiences that alter their internal state. When you consistently create emotional resonance, you are no longer just another person passing through her life. You are a catalyst, a marker of growth, a source of clarity or comfort. That imprint persists even when you're not around. Transformation isn't only emotional, it's intellectual too. Sharing new perspectives, challenging assumptions gently, introducing her to ideas or ways of thinking she hadn't considered, creates a form of engagement that sticks. When her mind has been expanded by your presence, she doesn't just think about what you said in the moment. She revisits it later. She reflects. She wonders. She grows. And growth creates longing because she associates you not just with feelings, but with evolution, with progression, with betterment. This principle also extends to confidence and self-perception. A man who elevates her sense of self doesn't make her dependent on him. He makes her feel capable, seen, and validated in her own agency. That subtle empowerment is addictive because it contrasts sharply with relationships that drain or diminish. Women miss not just the person who is kind or fun, but the person who lifts them emotionally and intellectually in ways they rarely encounter elsewhere. There's a delicate balance, though. This isn't about control or heroism. It's not about teaching or fixing her. Transformation occurs naturally when your presence aligns with authenticity, consistency, and integrity. The key is your own alignment. When you're clear in your identity, disciplined in your growth, and intentional in your interactions, the impact is organic. You leave a positive trace simply by being fully yourself, and that trace creates emotional resonance long after you've gone. Psychologically, humans crave what enhances their lives. We remember people who expand our emotional or cognitive bandwidth, not just those who occupy space or time. This is why experiences matter more than quantity of contact. A man can be rarely present, yet deeply unforgettable if his presence consistently enriches her world. Conversely, a man constantly available but emotionally flat is quickly forgotten. Absence only magnifies what was meaningful. It doesn't create it. Think about the way people reminisce about relationships that changed them. Rarely do they remember the minor gestures. They remember the feelings those gestures evoked: empowerment, excitement, clarity, inspiration. That's the essence of leaving someone better than you found them. It's the emotional and psychological echo that lingers when you're gone. When you consistently impact her in positive, memorable ways, you occupy her mind even when she isn't consciously aware of it. Missing becomes less about longing for physical presence and more about yearning for the experience of herself in relation to you. That is a far deeper, more powerful form of attraction than simple attention or availability could ever produce. So the challenge isn't merely to be liked or noticed, it's to leave a legacy in her daily experience, to be the man whose presence adds value, whose energy uplifts, whose authenticity inspires. When you do this, you stop chasing desire and allow it to chase you, because people don't miss someone they simply observed. They miss someone who made them better, and no absence can erase that.